Well, Joshua Mahony is a chief market analyst at Scope Markets. Hello to you. So Chinese and Asian stocks have surged this week. What would you say the primary drivers are behind this rally?
Well, there's certainly a feeling of optimism around trade talks at the moment. Globally, of course, there's been a big focus on Asia recently with the likes of Japan getting a deal across the line. We've seen the same for the Philippines and Indonesia. Just this morning, I was hearing about the potential for a breakthrough in talks with India. And so there's a feeling that one by one, we see these countries striking trade agreements with the US, really staving off the possibility of a sharp ramp up in terms of tariffs. And that really, despite the fact that these agreements do provide tariffs, they are, with each agreement, providing the basis for the next agreement to be made. So certainly there is a feeling that right now China isn't necessarily in as bad a position as many had thought coming into Trump's presidency. And in my mind, it's the Achilles heel, which is the rare earth minerals and materials that really has provided China with the ability to stand toe-to-toe with the US. And in my mind will probably lead to a more advantageous trade agreement that is good for both nations rather than just for the US.
With record southbound inflows from the Chinese mainland into Hong Kong stocks, what do you think that says about the domestic investor confidence in the Chinese economy?
Well, it's an interesting one because, okay, there's been the big story over the period that Trump's been in power for the second time, where it's been inflows into China, inflows into European stocks, and it's international investors. And by and large, it's international investors that are investing in the likes of the Hang Seng, and it's more the mainland investors that are investing in the likes of the Shanghai Composite and the like. However, the fact that we're seeing domestic investors really getting on board with this story really shows a number of things. For one thing, a confidence that the economy is doing well, and a confidence that people are essentially able to invest. Of course, there's been much made of the sort of real estate crisis within the country, the debt crisis within the country. Maybe it's not necessarily as bad as many had thought, because there is money floating around that's going into these stocks now. And certainly people feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, given the huge amount of uncertainty that has been sort of looming large over the Chinese economy thus far.
Joshua, semiconductor stocks have been on a bit of a tear globally, haven't they? What do you say the core driving factors driving this investor optimism is? What would you say it is?
I would say, for one part, we've already seen sort of precursor earnings coming out, the likes of TSMC, who provide the chips for many of your big names, the likes of Nvidia and the likes. They already came out with a blowout quarter. So that sort of indicates that Nvidia is probably going to come out with a particularly strong quarter. We've seen very high capex numbers from Alphabet already. Next week, we're going to see another 4 of the Mag 7 reporting. And so there is a feeling that this quarter is going to be a very good one when it comes to semis, when it comes to the tech sector, the AI story. At the same time, people are feeling more confident that we aren't necessarily going to see a recession, that the US economy is doing well, that actually we will see trade deals rather than a massive ramp up in terms of tariffs. And that sees people wanting to jump into stocks. Now, when you jump into stocks, you can do so by getting onto a single company, or you can do so by buying an ETF or a tracker. If you're buying a tracker or an ETF, you're essentially investing in the entire market. And when some of these stocks are very heavily overweighted, as many of these tech names are, they, of course, are going to get significant inflows coming into them. So, yes, the tech sector generally will lead the way, but there is a feeling that the tech sector is also the area of major growth and innovation. And therefore, when people buy the dip, they often buy the dip for those names first and foremost.
Joshua Mahony from Scope Markets, thank you very much indeed for that.